let me just say a couple words about this show. I've been doing this show for years. It began as a show, like an hour-long show, and then somebody at chess.com was like, dude, you need to do it 3 hours. 3 hours. Because I wasn't covering enough games as it was, I guess. And so it just morphed into this huge show, and all kinds of things happened through the years. And chess.com mostly has changed the way, they're supporting people. They're still supporting us, but not, there's no financial anything. They're just going to show us, like right now, sometimes on their page. Anyways, so this is a momentous time in the show because for years on chess.com, we've had people submit their annotations for the show. And to my mind, it's been the most valuable thing about the show is that players took the time to do annotations on a very deep level. And if you go back through the years, you can see that many players really upped their analysis game and I think became better players because of it. And so with that, I'll just give you my basic pitch. I come from a school of chess improvement, which claims that the path to improving your game is to study your games. It's not an easy path. It usually is much more difficult than any other thing just because it's so psychologically difficult to look at your own mistakes and try to think about why they happened. So the show is moving from that kind of submission basis where we did it on chess.com. I'm praying that chess.com will keep all the old archives. Maybe we can bring it over to our Discord. As you see on my page here, we've got a new way of doing things. It's going to be on the Dojo Discord. And Kostya's got it set up where you got to sub on the Twitch first and then get into our Discord and then get into the channel and submit the game. Now, there's a couple hoops there. And I realized it was a couple hoops before just to find it on the chess.com forums. I wish it would be a little easier. In any case, that is how we're doing it. And the other hoop that you really have to do is if you just submit a game and you have no notes or just a couple notes, I'm not going to do it. Even if you are a Twitch subscriber, the idea of this show is that there's several layers, right? You submit a game where you have thought about deeply, you've putting some words to it, not just computer variations. And then I come along and I try to think deeply about each of these games. So there's a couple hoops to submit. It's not that hard once you get used to it. And so we'll do it once a month, hopefully. The show might evolve. Maybe it'll do a weekly show or something like that. In any case, I'm going to try to keep the same rhythm. So once a month, and next will be January 27th, similar time. Will we evolve from 3 hours? I don't know, but I'm going to try to keep basically the same format. The idea of a month too is that you have time to look deeply at your games. And I really do believe that you can spend a lot of time on your games. And often what will happen is my input will be maybe even just superficial. I'm just giving you my take on the position. Doesn't mean I'm right or anything like that. I'm sure, I know I've been wrong on many takes that I've had on the positions. I'm just sharing with you how I see the position. Okay, Sharkima, yes, we're going to try to have it to be a subbed situation, to be getting onto the Dojo Discord channel monthly analysis. All right, with that said, let me show you what it's going to look like today. Kind of in a cool way, we have 3 games we're going to start off with that are Dojo Battles. That is people in the dojo who are playing each other. One of the coolest things about ChessDojo is that Kostya set up this Discord server. People are playing each other there, both on a ladder and round robins. And it's just cool because, A, you're getting some long games, and although I don't think we're immune from cheating, it's just definitely not the culture of people who come to our channel that are going to cheat. So it's kind of a cool environment. And we're going to see in a lot of these games that the players have taken the time, both of the players have taken the time to outline some of their thoughts. Okay, So here we go. All right. So this first game is Seth against a guy named Paul 1e4. And the hilarious thing here is that Paul 1e4 was once Paul in New Jersey. Friends of the show will know him as the man who is always deprecating his own skills and his own positions. And we've come to know him as just somebody who's very pessimistic about his game. This time he wins, but it's Seth who's annotating this game. And then in the next game, we're going to have Paul, who for the next decade has changed his name from Paul in New Jersey to Paul 1e4. Will that change his character? I don't know. We're going to see. I thought Seth played a very beautiful game. A couple at least very deep moves. So, first of all, we get the Shevesnikov. And one curious thing is when we had this, I thought, interesting debate on the Dojo Talks about openings for club players and openings for pros. And I was the minority opinion in that I still do feel, that you can play, whether you're a pro or an amateur, you can play the same openings. If you like it, I think that should be fine. And anyways, I'm bringing that up because many of the other GMs in our dojo here, Eugene Perelstein was joining us, felt like Shevesnikov, no way, too theoretical. You shouldn't do it unless you're a pro. And I just totally disagree. And we're kind of seeing in this game that both players are going to make mistakes. So, if you play an opening at a certain level and your opponents are at the same level, their mistakes will generally be, and their mistakes in their theoretical knowledge will be commensurate with yours. So like I said, I wasn't convinced on that, and we'll probably talk more about that. So here's Black's first mistake. You should stop the knight from coming to c4 and play b5. As you can see, really great notes here by Seth. Now, even that said, knight c4, I don't think it's a winning advantage for white. It definitely seems like it's got to be better, though, right? Okay, bishop f6, of course, now knight c4 should be played, and Paul plays, let's call it an automatic move. And one thing about these automatic moves is I find like part of the problem in learning opening theory is you get kind of in a rut of like doing the same moves again and again without really thinking about what's going on. And even GMs are guilty of this. And what Paul is doing here is, in his mind, he's like, well, I know that what I do next is I play bishop e2 and castles, not thinking about the fact that Black hasn't played b5, which in a lot of ways is the entire point of the Shevesnikov, to try to say that this knight on a3 is a bad piece. If it could play knight c4 and come in, oh man, then it really is a dynamic piece. So here we go, b5, and I'm just going to assume that we have now transposed to normal Shevesnikov lines now. Knight d5, bishop g5. And here again, could he have castled? Probably, yeah. But I think bishop g5 looks fine to me. The question is really, what is the evaluation of the move c4? That's the thing that I'm not sure of here, and I think white should play it. Because b4 might be met with something like knight takes b4 or queen a4 first, and then we're winning a pawn, right? By the puzzle rush tactic like this. Even here, Black would have interesting compensation, let's say, because of his unopposed dark square bishop. But that would be the problem, and if that's the case, that might indeed be the issue with bishop g5 instead of castles short. But okay, here we go. Castles, knight e7. Okay. And let's just say something obvious. White players through the ages have tried various ways to get the knight on a3 into the game. And so what's going to happen is White does not get it into the game. And kind of the story of White's suffering in this game has everything to do with that knight. Okay, so c4, good move. By the way, I'm pretty sure that castles is correct instead of knight e7, right? Castles so you can meet c4 with b4. And I think that would be, to my mind, a very standard Sveshnikov position. Am I an expert in the Sveshnikov? Absolutely not. But that's just my feeling for how they play these positions. So c4 now, I think it's problematic for White. And when Black takes here, I think there's a very instructive mistake when Paul plays c takes, because now the bishop on e2 has lost all of its power, and the knight on a3 is going to have to really try to rehabilitate itself. What time control was this played? I believe this was like something close to a 90-30. Someone saying in an earlier show, I preferred c3 over c4. It depends on the position. Honestly, I feel like if you can get that knight into a3, however it can happen, you want to get it in. And in this position, I think it's strong because you can't even play b4, which I think is the normal response here. So in this position, Seth rightly says queen d5, and the issue for Black is that it's hard for him to stop the knight from becoming active, and that's all really White needs to have. If queen d5 for whatever reason wasn't playable, then I would suggest this weird looking move as well, just because we want to provoke some activity on the queen side, so that our knight can get something done. Okay, here we go. Castles, knight b1, f5, and this I think is like the dream. This is, to my mind, the dream of the Sveshnikov, that we're just getting this beautiful unopposed dark square bishop. It's like a King's Indian bishop, but you know, it's outside the pawn chain at the moment. And now White plays, let's call it the standard looking bishop d3. And I think a very interesting moment now coming that I have some misgivings about. That isn't to say I still kind of like it, and I like the way Seth played the position, but he's torn on this position, and I'm also torn on this position. Where the obvious problem with f4 is you are killing your bishop on g5. Potentially. We're going to see Seth has a great way to fix that bishop, but that's the issue. But if he doesn't play f4, he has to worry about losing the e4 square to things like knight c3 and ef. So it's kind of an interesting question. Now, maybe one way to frame it is to just ask yourself who's better and why and by how much in this position. One problem I see for Black here is when you play f4 like this, you know, you're saying that the bishop is going to kind of die for a while, and that this is your main thrust hope, you know. We're going to see that Seth is a great idea to come back and over here. Beautiful. Great chess. You know, we can debate maybe the specifics of it, but as a strategic plan, absolutely correct. What it will do, though, is it should give White some time to start some kind of something over there on the queen side, and to get things like f3 in. And it'll be hard to get g5, g4. It'll just be hard to kind of make it work. I want to say I intuitively believe in f4, but let's compare it for a second just with this position. And I don't even know exactly where the pieces should go, but let's just try like queen b6. And we'll ask ourselves, what do we think is happening? Any kind of queen h5, I'm assuming I'm okay with bishop h6. And my gut is that this is pretty good. This is pretty good for black because of the dark squares. And you got all kinds of things like rook f2 and bishop e3 and maybe a queen d4. And of course, very simplistic ideas of bishop d7s and doubling, or maybe even doubling this way, right? So it's definitely an interesting choice. And I believe in black's position in both cases, Seth, but I just want to say I feel how you're torn on this one. I think it is an interesting decision. Okay, so maybe I'm going to go ahead and say Fe. I'm going to say Fe on the principle that the bishop, your unopposed bishop and the two bishop advantage want the open position. It's a concession, though, of course, to give him the e4 square. Okay, so f4, knight d2. Okay, fine. Now queen e8. And here I'm going to say Paul, I think, makes a mistake. And then it's going to start looking at least pretty interesting for black. The thing that I couldn't understand is, like, let's say he plays a4. I think he's got to play this move. And the point is to try to gain this square for the knight. And getting the square for the knight is also an aggressive intention, because we would love to stop this maneuver, bishop d8 to b6. So this is one of the positions I'm just not sure about for black, of how to proceed. And maybe queen e8 wasn't right either. I thought as well a long time here, like, could I do something like this? You know, hoping for some weird, f3 bishop g3 thing at some point. The thing I couldn't figure out, though, is the second I play g5, I'm really concerned about g3. So that's what I couldn't figure out. But like I said, I still I still believe in this position for black. And maybe, it's kind of ugly, but maybe just retreat the bishop and start launching the thing. I'm not sure. One other thing maybe that Kostya would chime in on a position like this is, in the King's Indian, you kind of need the knight to be the disruptor. And what I mean by that is, we would love to have a knight somewhere on the board just to have a disrupting influence when we get this attack rolling. Because we really are kind of down a piece for a while. Unless, as in the game, white enables it, with bishop d8 to b6. Okay. Paul's saying he wanted it on the king's side. The problem with knight f3, Paul, is that you're going to get rolled with g5, g4. So let's look. Queen e8, knight f3, bishop d8. Beautiful, beautiful chess. I want to say I'm a huge fan. When I saw it, I was like, oh. And, the ratings these days are so weird. On the little chess.com thing, it said Seth had a rating of 1,300. And I was like, this bishop d8 is not a 1,300 move. That is genius level, queen e8 and bishop d8. Genius level. Okay. Queen d2. I'm not really sure what that does. g5, good move. Rook fc1. g4, knight e1. And now there's some things here, Seth, that I didn't quite understand. You played bishop b6. To my mind, you needed to stop him from playing rook c6, so like bishop d7. And then oh my God, Paul has to figure his life out, because you're going to play bishop b6 and it's going to hurt. It's going to really hurt. And rook c6 is just like, let's call it King's Indian style counterplay, where if he takes on d6, that's a real thing. So rook b8. And now, Paul, if you want to, I know you like to criticize yourself, but if you're going to do it at one point in this game, it should be this move, b4. You don't have all that much time. He's about to go full kahuna on you over there, buddy. So why aren't we? I mean, I don't understand. I don't understand why we're not taking the pawn. Yeah, take the pawn. Take the pawn. And then if g3, worst case scenario, worst case, we just snip the thing. We say thank you very much. And I don't know what's happening, but you're not toast here, Paul. You're not toast here. You're gonna, you don't have to play knight f3 either. You could start with rook c1. You've got totally reasonable play all of a sudden. So, and maybe you have something better after g3. You probably need to get rid of that bishop. You need to get rid of that bishop. In any case, b4. Now I got to think. Oh man, now Seth has got to be winning this thing. Now here's an interesting thing. Paul's saying in the chat he was worried that the rook was going to get trapped, and there's certainly a concern for that. But when we think about it, at this point, that bishop on b6 is worth more than our rook. I mean, it went from like the worst piece on the board to just the golden god over there, right? So, knight f3, and now Seth criticizes bishop f2 a little bit. It's hard to imagine. It's hard to imagine that this can be wrong. And now queen g6. There might be other moves, but let's just say that's got to be correct. Oh, excuse me, I did the same thing he did. I did the same, I fell for the same trick. Oh man, that's really embarrassing. And I've even gone over the game, Seth. I've even gone over the game. So I was like, oh, that seems right. Same exact problem that Seth ran into here. So let's think about it here. First thing I'm going to say is this position has got to be winning. And the easy first move, I think, is something like bishop e3. It just seems like, oh, man, that's got to be something to enjoy. Queen h5 after that also looks very good. And in the game, you have ideas like queen h5 and bishop h3. Those all look pretty tasty. But again, you don't actually have to do anything. I mean, white's not threatening much. You could play rook f6, I guess. We're going to say that's the easy move to play. All right, now, even after this blunder, I still got to believe in your position. But now, here's a funny thing. I've been playing, sometimes I play the subscribers just for fun. A little bit to relax. We're just hanging out, playing on the Dojo Twitch channel. And I've gotten a number of really, really bad positions. And one way I've survived those positions is my opponents going absolutely crazy when there's no need to, such as this position. There's no need for black to lose his mind here. Things like bishop h3 look good. Bishop g4, I feel like that should be winning too. Bishop e3 looks good. But check out what Seth does here. He goes full on crazy. Would it be beautiful? Would it be beautiful if he took? Of course it would. But the weird thing is, like, he's not even threatening anything, I don't think. Right? I don't think he's even threatening anything. So, really great game. We got 2 more games in the dojo here. Dojo games played on our Discord over, well, let's say organized through the Discord, mostly ladder games. We also have the round robins. Let's move on to the next one. And this one we have Paul against Max here. And Paul does an opening variation that I've never really thought about. Well, I've thought about this quite a bit, but I've never thought about that move. It might well be a move, I've just never seen it. And let me just introduce this position. This is a very interesting way of playing against the Caro-Kann. Basically, you are playing a Carlsbad structure, like a Queen's Gambit decline, with reverse colors, and you're up a tempo. And it's a little bit difficult for black to get his bishop on c8 out. So, why h3? Well, to stop the bishop from coming out. Now, there's a couple different ways to play this position. The thing that Fischer popularized back in the day was to play c3, bishop f4, and just wait forever, forever on knight f3. because it's just like I don't want the bishop to come out to g4. Another very practical way of playing this position is just play knight f3 and allow bishop g4. Instead of going through all the shenanigans of bishop f4 and yada yada, it's all this weird theoretical line. Just play knight f3. Accept the fact he's going to play bishop g4. And you get a very interesting position that if you understand it, I think really can be a great thing. Actually, I'm gonna jump ahead just a second here. I normally don't do this. Right. We get a similar thing here. Look at that. It's very similar structure. A worse case of it that we're going to look at in Nicholas's game much later. And one thing I want to stress is this kind of came through Trompovsky. A lot of times London players, this can happen too, where someone plays C takes and you get this amazing Carlsbad structure. And the thing I just want to say is it's very dangerous. It's very dangerous for black, especially if e6 locks the bishop in. And there it happens. I recall I lost a game against, this is in the last millennium, in the U.S. under 16 cadet tournament. Cadet is just under 16, against my friend Greg Caden. I believe we had not this exact same position, but instead of h3, the bishop f4 line. And I had no idea what I was doing. And I got crushed really, really badly. I still can remember that game very well. So, h6, let's call that unnecessary. And Paul, this bishop e3, I'm going to call that weird because the main thing, this is just an easy way of understanding the position once you get to the Carlsbad, is to say, look, I'm going to plant a knight on e5. And the bishop e3 is unfortunately in the way of that idea. So I would say the default plan here would be something like queen e2 and knight e5, or you could play rook e1 first or knight d2 first. You have some flexibility in that. But in general, we're looking to plant a beast on e5. Now, the virtue, of course, of h6 is that black prevented you from developing your bishop in a natural way. It is, unfortunately for him, also a target for you to hit later on. Okay, so, and it was a tempo, more importantly. a6, okay. And let's say the obvious. When you are playing against the Carlsbad, the standard way to gain counterplay is to aim for the minority attack. And in this case, you really got to, black really needs to sense the urgency here. Fortunately for white, bishop e3 really got in the way of the e file, you know. By the way, actually, let me go back to this Nicholas game for a second. A lot of London players get this situation as well. And there's just a huge difference. Let me just put d5 on the board here. There's a huge difference between this kind of position and the one with CD, ED, and d5, precisely because the e file is such a big deal. And it's a very simple thing for white to play as well. Okay, so let's look at what happened. b5, a4, and Paul, I'm going to say no. I'm going to say no, I don't like this move because you are encouraging him to play what he wants to play. He wants to play b4. Basic idea of the minority attack, right, is that once this b4 happens, if you ever take, then this pawn's weak. If you push, then you get the isolated pawn on d4 again. And if you don't, and you allow that to happen, well, then black can claim that that's also a weakness. Now, in the past, you might have heard me rail against the minority attack, mostly because it's a pawn idea, and if you're not focused on your pieces and instead focused on the pawns, you're just not going to be a good chess player. That's my sense, and it's partly out of my own chess history. When I was a kid, I didn't really have a teacher to tell me that this minority attack thing and all these other pawn break stuff that I was doing, that it wasn't really chess because I wasn't focused on the pieces and instead I was focused on the stupid pawn structure. For example, it's a much bigger deal that the knight on c6 is dominated by the pawn on c3 than is a big deal that the pawn on c3 might become weak. Pawns aren't people, my friends. Pawns aren't people. Okay, so another plan that's interesting, you can get this reverse colors too, for white in this position, would have been b4. And this is just a cool idea where we can play knight b3 and think about knight c5. It's pretty annoying. And notice too, these pawns really dominate the knight on c6 well. Pretty standard plan. You sometimes see a similar thing with reverse colors. Okay, so this is enabled black. Do I understand bishop b7? No, I don't know. I don't really get it. Here's a basic question. Max, buddy, why aren't you castling? Is there a reason? Is there a reason you're not castling? Okay, rook e1. Now let's just say the obvious. It can't be a bad move, but the bishop is in our way on e3. All right, knight a5. M says this move was simply bad. White won't exchange on a5. And black will return to c6, blocking the bishop again. Now, knight a5 might be poor, but let's have a little sympathy for your plight. The bishop on b7, yeah, you want to do something with it. Makes sense to me. Makes sense to me. And knight a5 is going to kind of set a little storm in motion that I'm not sure, it's hard for you to come up with a plan here. So I have a lot of sympathy for knight a5. We might consider something like rook e8 to play e5 ourselves. That might be the better plan, to try to highlight the fact that the bishop on e3 is not doing that hot. All right, here we get. Now the madness is going to start. We get his good bishop, and now he goes back to knight c6. Now, here's a moment where I think we should say, no, I don't like knight c6. So I'm not sure knight a5 was so much the problem as instead when you played knight c6 here. You wrote about knight b3, and I'm wondering if you considered another variation here, Max. This applies to Paul, of course, as well. Wouldn't it make sense to drop the knight on c4, either now or in the near future? So, for example, snip, snip, and again, we can do a waiting move before this, but just knight c4. And the point is obviously if he doesn't take it, our knight has to be happy where it's landed. And if he does, white's extra pawn really isn't that meaningful. And we have great, fantastic light square control. And will we take on f3? I don't even know. I don't even know. But I just know this position, I'm not too disappointed by him. And you don't have to, like I said, you could play queen c7 or something first. There's really I don't think there's any huge rush. You could play queen e7 first as well. I'm just trying to say you could think about it. But I think in general, knight c4 is where you want to go. Okay. So now the knight is dominated again, and the bishop on b7 is funky. All right. Now, bishop f4, good. Let's say the obvious. White now has a beautiful, unopposed dark square bishop, and the position is wild and woolly, but in principle, I think we have to believe in white here. Another move that I'm really not actually sure of, let's just put bishop f4. There were other ideas, but I mean, bishop f4 has got to be correct. So he does this, which is a little controversial because now You've opened everything up over there. Queen a5. And here, Paul, I would say that the critical moment of the game has come. And I think, I just want to say for everybody out there, like, it's, first of all, it's very hard. When I play the people on the dojo, for example, I'm always playing too fast. It's very hard to concentrate online. So I have a lot of sympathy for finding the right frame of mind to, just think in a position like this. Okay, that said, here we're going to see in a couple other positions today. White should say to himself, I think, say something like, I gotta be better. That bishop on b7 is terrible. The queen has left her man. My bishops are great, but especially that bishop on f4. So let's think about it. Bishop d6. One thing I would have wanted instead of bishop d6 is to just play rook a b1 first. It just feels like, man, that's got to be right. That's got to be right. And if, for example, the guy plays this horrendously ugly move, knight d8, if Max does that, then we have other thoughts. For example, queen e3 looks like a nice move, right? We've got the puzzle rush tactic of bishop h7. And are we threatening bishop h6? I'm thinking about it. I'm definitely thinking about it for sure. And I'm encouraged to think about it because this queen, like I said, has left her man. Yeah. Okay. So really interesting position. I think a great position to say the bishop's got to be doing well. So the question is really, does this beautiful, obviously it looks great to push the bishop there, but I'm not sure it helped that much. Boom. Now, one thing I want to praise Paul here is he's basically saying, maybe I'll lose the a pawn. Fine, but I believe in the openness of my position here, right? Okay, knight d8. A position only a mother could love. Great Danny Wrench quote. It's a hard business for black here, the very hard business. And the knight on d8 isn't really doing anybody any favors. One crude thought for black, maybe you want to try something violent like e5. I don't know if it works, but that's the kind of, if we're gonna be looking at knight d8, we should also be looking at e5. Okay, so here's the next critical moment, and in a way, one of the things I want to stress with critical moments is, like, I think, right, we have a little bit less of a degree of freedom now than we did before, just because, right, the bishop not clear, I needed it there on d6. Okay, let's read what Paul wrote. Queen c2. I considered knight e5, and the computer said that is what I should have played. I was worried that my position would collapse after queen c3. Okay, now let's think about this. After you've played this very nice move, rook a b1 ball, now you're going to go into, like, let's say save the pawns mode, right? And time is really important here because the guy is going to be thinking, I think, about things like knight e4, and he's going to get a little bit of play. In addition to knight e5, the queen e3 move still holds some appeal to me. Let's honor the intuition, though, of knight e5, and if the computers have an intuition, is that you're fighting for the blockade square, and what is really important to see is that taking this pawn is not your concern, because you would just be enabling the rook behind this bad boy, and I think that's done. I don't see him surviving that business, And knight e5 as well. What a great square for the piece. What a great square. So one of the things I want to give you license to, Paul, is you play it nice. Your openings, honestly, are pretty good. And when you get to a position like this, I want to encourage you to just say to yourself, Kraai told me that I'm allowed to think for like 20 minutes here to figure out what I should be doing. Okay, so here we go. Knight d7. And now it's getting a little bit hardy, like, oh man, maybe this isn't going to be so easy. One thing, for example, if our bishop were on f4, we could play rook b7 and c6. So I think after knight d4, we're just worse all of a sudden, and it's just so unfair. There's no way we should be worse here. Yeah. Let's look at the variation that happens in the game. Oh, excuse me. Yeah. Boom, boom, check to the miserable king. Very nice. Very nice. And that's the kind of thing that, you should believe in this position, even though things might feel a little hectic. You should believe that, yeah, you gotta be better still, Paul. You gotta be better. And knight d4, I feel like you're just giving it up. Boom. Passive. Now black's got to be doing all right. Let's say something obvious here, Paul. With this business here, you might be technically worse or lost, but you still have reasonable chances here, right? So, knight d6, I'm not sure. Actually, what we're going to see here, this is from Max. Max, if you're listening, what you did now is you turned into the evil pawn grubber, and you're sending your knight on a mission to go snag the a pawn. And the critique I'm going to tell you is the reason you're doing is you can't imagine a different plan besides that. Your knight on e4, though, oh man, no, that guy stays. I don't care what it is that you do here. Maybe bishop b5, maybe something else, but don't move the knight. That knight is a genius, absolute genius. Now, bishop d3, you could have done other things, but all right. And let's say the obvious here, Max goes pawn hunting, and I don't know. I don't know, Max. This is dangerous. And look what he says. Look what he says here. A brave move that I am dedicating to GM Yasser Serouan. I'm telling you, that man has poisoned American chess. Has poisoned American chess. There's no need for you to be taking that pawn, Max. Oh, no. Now you got yourself in a dangerous situation. And listen to Paul. We see this basically every show. At some point, he becomes despondent. And he's like, dude, it's all over for me now. There's nothing to save me. I throw in the towel. And honestly, like here, he's right. I'm 2 pawns down. Black has a passed pawn. My position's hopeless. No, bro. No, he's just handing you a lifeline. He's handing you a lifeline. Queen d4. And then I guess you resigned here, buddy. I guess you resigned either this one or even before queen d4. But you have so many practical chances here. I mean, let's just, for example, put in that one. You know? Oof, I'm worried. I'm really worried for black. There's thoughts of c4. If knight c6, you can throw in that. And then at the least here, you got a perpetual. At the least, come on. Right? No. There's a lot of... Black has put himself... I don't know if he's done himself a favor. And let me say, Max, I'm going to make fun of you a little bit here because that's what I do on the show. Just kidding. But the reason is I did this as a kid. I remember distinctly. I was like, well, that pawn on a5, that's a target. Let's go take it. Because I didn't know how else to even think about the position. And that's how I would lose these games I have no business losing or drawing, as in this case. Lonesome Cowboy, he did resign. And it's a feature of Paul, he has rechristened himself, by the way. He is no longer Paul in New Jersey. He is Paul 1E4. So take that. The new decade is here. All right, let's move on to our next dojo game. This is Julian against Tan. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. This is a ladder game on the dojo. I think something like 90-30. And really interesting game. So let's get into it. Engine wasn't used to analyze the game. By the way, let me just do this pitch again. I think if you go back and look at the archives, you can see that a variety of players have really upped their game. On the show today, we have several people that have been on the show again and again. And not using the engine, really good. If you can sit there with a notebook and write out what you think of different positions and your evaluation of those positions and the ideas of those positions, chess will just come alive for you. Anyways, that's the thing, and I'm trying to help people do that. That's why I do this monthly show. Started ages ago. We are moving from putting the annotations on chess.com to now on the Dojo Discord channel, monthly analysis. All right, here we go. This is a tricky way to play the Dutch. Some people play d5 there with a stone wall, but black plays d6, and this is an interesting way to play. Tall played a bunch of games like this way back in the day, and I already forgot what the name was. There was some fancy Russian name for this variation. But it's an interesting line, and I think one cool way to think about openings is to say to yourself, you know what? Wouldn't it be great to just rediscover some of these openings that old players played? Just go through their games, find the plans that they played, and then proceed from there, you know? And that way you just are able to pose your opponents new problems, and you will have like a little nugget of understanding that they won't have. There's going to be no chessable course covering this variation. All right, so knight c3, and now black plays knight e4, and I guess this is theoretical because black, who's also giving notes to this game, says he's had this position before. I'm pretty sure that Tall played queen e8 here, and I think at some point, like both knight c6 and a5 are also moves. Knight e4 I don't like because, I'm a tempo fiend. I'm a tempo fiend, and I would rather get my development done. Very interesting position. I like white. I believe in white's position mostly because of the development, and it's hard to see how, in particular, the black knight on b8 is going to get involved. So knight c6, it's dominated by the pawns. We've talked about it before. And when e5 comes by black, then, you know, it's not going to have any force. So white has a big choice here. And he says, I didn't know where the bishop belongs. Oh, and you know what? Actually, I didn't, you know, sometimes I go over these games and there's like ideas in one game that will then be seen in another. And we're going to get the same thing here. And what we're going to see with Julian here, it might be Julian. Julian's from Poland. I don't know if it's Julian or Julian. In any case, that he feels the need to develop the bishop. And this happens in a lot of positions. And from right now, it's not at all clear where the bishop belongs. And on f4, it's just going to get smacked around. Let's say the obvious dynamic here. Even though white should be better, black is playing for mate. He wants to bring his heavies to the king side and mate white. It's a very simple, tall-like plan. Beautiful business. And the bishop on f4 is going to accelerate those ideas, whether it's g5 or e5. And it's also just even not clear what the bishop is doing on f4. So the idea I was talking about. If you get your rook on a1 to do something, anything, it doesn't matter what the bishop on c1 that the bishop on c1 hasn't moved. So you quite rightly say a4, and we don't know what black's going to play, but it's just very comforting for us to play a4, because if he lets us play a5, then a6 will be a threat. And if he doesn't, maybe our rook goes to hang out on b5 itself, where it does something and we don't have to move the bishop. So to that end, let's go to Matt's game. I usually don't jump around like this, but check out what he did. This was an opening he knew quite well. We're going to look at this later, but I just want to share this, how he played it. So he's got this position out of a king's pawn opening, and he's just like, you know what? I'll just leave the bishop on c1. No need to do anything. You know, no need. I'll just hang out on c1. And he leaves it there forever, kind of like this game. As long as the rook on a4, the a rook, does something, well, it's cool then. Then we just leave that beautiful bishop on c1. All right, let's go back to Julian's game. So, bishop f4. And I think, right, one of the things that you can take away, Julian, is that you were kind of obsessing over stopping e5, but in the long term, there's no real stopping e5. And now you play bishop g5, and definitely now the initiative is passing to black. Black was surprised by this move, but it's a position where white has lost the thread, right? White has lost the thread, and now he's just trying to slow black down. Boom, boom, boom. And now h4, which I'm going to call a crime. h4 is definitely a crime. Why? Because you're weakening your position on your weak side of the board, right? He has just got more force over there on the king side, and with h4, you're creating a lot of weaknesses for yourself. A basic way to understand weak side, strong side is on your weak side, you just have less resources to bring to bear on the weaknesses, so they will be much weaker. For example, if you're playing the French, your king side's weaker, your queen side's stronger. And when you have those less pieces to bring to bear on those squares, you know, those weaknesses can really be exploited. Okay. Black has several good moves here. One simpleton move would be, you know, thinking at some point about f4. Black plays h6, fine. e5, good. Bishop f3. And now black's next move is very logical looking, but ultimately it makes it difficult for us to press ahead, namely queen g6. Why? Because when you play with Federico the f-pawn, we've talked a lot about Federico on this show, really you're aiming for f4. And one great thing on a defensive level that white does here is he gives a check, plays king h2, and is now going to aim for f4, after which, hey, maybe he'll survive. If we can stop black from playing f4, maybe white will survive. So here, black played knight d8. I didn't quite get it. I definitely think knight e7 makes a lot more sense. Yeah, I don't understand knight d8. And one of the things in terms of annotating games I really recommend is to think about knight. Now, I might be wrong about knight d8. Might be fine. But you know, to try to express what the intentions were with knight d8. So, knight d8, f4. Good move, especially from a defensive standpoint. And black writes here that, or white wrote, I guess, that now c6, bishop g2, e4 would be better for black. I agree, but it's not over. I don't think so anyway. I don't think it's over, just because white will have a little bit of time to adjust, to jadoob, to jadoob his resources. you know, with e3, move the rook, bishop f1. Yeah, he's not dead yet. Whereas, really, I felt like he deserved death when he played h4. Okay, so let's look. Boom. This might be better for you, honestly. It's a little bit more dynamic. So Black writes, I missed this move when I played the whole plan with c5. And I am not certain that this move is that hot because it is ultimately going to trade off the bishop on b3, which is, I guess, is good bishop, for one of those pieces. And the knight on h3, now we're going to, you know, the pawn structure has changed. Now the story of the game has changed, where the knight on h3 really is going to be a problem piece. And we're going to see the dynamic going forward is, well, is black going to win simply because that knight is so bad? Okay, so here we go. Could have played DC, absolutely. I guess that would have been my instinct, but this seems fine too. And I wasn't a huge fan of queen a6, mostly because I don't think you're going to kind of, next couple moves, there's going to be a queen trade happening. And I don't think black should be looking to trade the queens. Long term, our king is better. So what do I think? At some level, you want to play something like b6, either now or very soon. Very simple plan, right? And the basic idea is your knight is over there is going to do something far sooner than white's knight is. When you think about white's poor knight, it's going to take a while before that guy gets into the action. And this b6 move, by the way, is a couple points where I feel like you could have done it quicker. And it's all about speed here. You need to punish white before he finds a way to get the knight in. I didn't like rook b8. I would rather rook f7. All right, so this all happens. We trade queens. It breaks my heart a little bit. But are you better here? Yeah, you're doing better. But white right now needs to say, oh, buddy, I need to fix my business. And knight e3 is a threat, unfortunately. So I guess I want rook c3 because I'm really worried about b6. That's the thing that I'm worried about. And I want access to the d5 pawn, just some kind of counterplay. Because right now, by all means, I feel pretty strongly about this. Black needs to play b6. And just on a principle level, I don't see how white's going to survive because he's basically down a piece here, right? How is he going to... It's a hard business. It's a hard life, you know. Yeah, my guess is that's winning. Now, maybe he's still better after this. Finally, the knight comes back. And we can't, we got to waste some time. Boom. Okay, now all of a sudden, my friend Josh Riddell, we talk a lot about the bad piece and how it's angry. And this is a great example of where the bad piece has rehabilitated itself and now has become a really angry piece. And I guess the tide is going to shift a little bit here. Yeah. And what do we got to say? We got to say something like, holy moly, reversal of fortune. He who was last is now first, the knight on d5, and now white should be winning. Yeah, winning, because it's more than a pawn. Like our king should be over a little faster, the rook is better, everything's going our way. Not sure about that move, because white wants to play e3 anyway. All good moves. And here, a beautiful puzzle rush trick. I have to just admit, I hate puzzle rush. I despise the thing, but I somehow got it into my head that I need to make 44, the score 44 in 5 minutes, and I'm just like narrowly missing it time after time. I thought just like statistically I would end up hitting that thing by now, but it's been a real struggle for me. And I want to make this video about chess problem servers And I'm like, I have to hit 44 before I do that. It's been weeks, my friends. I have not hit it, but I am seeing rook takes b5 very quickly. Yeah, you'll see rook b5 quickly with this. One thing I think is funny about tactics in real games is that, in my experience, sometimes you don't see them because you trust your opponent, right? You're like, well, he's not going to be missing something like that, and so you don't look for those kinds of things. King b3, I don't understand. Let's say we didn't see rook b5, right? I still think we should play king c4, make that knight move away. King a4, and now some horrendous stuff is about to happen where white incautiously gets his king into trouble. Now, this is a sad thing. However, we do get an interesting ending. Should white have taken a draw here? Probably should have. But for our benefit, he continued. The problem is rook a8, b8 with the eternal check, as they call it, right? That's the problem. And maybe there was some other weird thing with knight b6, but it just scares everybody too much to do it. So he does it. And first glance, and I still believe this, is that black is completely winning. The main reason being just that our rook is cutting the white king. And so, right, I gotta believe this was, yeah, it's gotta be winning. We'll do some variations here, but just on principle, black should be winning. All right, black does not play rook b3 because he says to himself, well, I'm not threatening rook takes e3. Now, it's good that he saw the puzzle rush tactic. But what we need to say, right, is that white doesn't have any great moves himself. And very soon we can play a move like king d5, right? We could have played king d5 as well instead of rook b3. So I'm going to go ahead and say rook b3 looks winning to me. And king e6 is weird. Like, what are we doing over there? g4 and rook a4. Ton, if you're listening, this is the one you should be screaming at yourself for, because you're letting the white king back in. It's like, when you think about your assets in this position, it's not just the material. It's not just the fact that you got that weak e3 pawn. It's that king, buddy. You're like, if you were in a wrestling match, the king being on a6 would be like both of his legs tied down, and you just untied them. Are you lost or something after this? No. I mean, the game's going to go on. It's going to be really interesting. But now all of a sudden, white can start dreaming his own dreams after this. Boom. Knight c4. Right, and now white's saying, maybe I can win this. And whether it's true or not, he can certainly, be encouraged by what's happened here. Yeah. I'm not thrilled with that move. Rook c3. I don't know what you're doing. Maybe h5 instead or something, buddy. You gotta get counterplay. Okay. So now we're gonna get some interesting questions about just do we want to call it technical chess? At the very least, this looks great. So, white to move, I'm assuming it's very close to winning. Let's just say that. It's very close to winning. I gotta believe it's just totally winning, honestly. It's so hard for the guy to do anything. So, let's just go back here a second. So he plays king d4, and it's not bad. Whew. Yeah, how about this move? f5, there's a nice move. And this is just something like this is going to be available to us. And the point being, if you take it, I've been doing my puzzle rush, right? Kostya got me onto the puzzle rush train. So you got your puzzle rush. Something like that's gonna be there. And of course, if you go back, then King D5 followed by Knight E5, too much, right? Too much. So the game goes on, and White says, you know what? We'll do this ending. Very interesting business is now going to happen. Let's just presume that that was correct. And one thing I'll say, very interesting, is I had this position against like a very strong IM in Moscow 2004, and I won it, but I had no idea. I was like, I don't know if it's winning or what the deal is. Later, I looked it up. It is, in fact, drawing, but it's very hard for Black. Black has to find some good moves. And I think, if I remember right, if White manages to get both of the pawns in the 6th rank, then that is winning. And Black has to be clever to prevent that from happening. So F6 is not ideal, but like we said, it's kind of hard. And then terrible things start to happen to Dude here. Oh no. Oh no. What happened? I'm losing my business. Oh no. And before you feel too bad, Julian, is that Kasparov played this position with, it was rook and king versus king and knight, played it on against Judith Polgar and won. A great rule of thumb is that you can hold this ending, but you must keep the king and the knight together. And one thing that one endgame maybe I should do a video on because it's so critical and interesting, is how to win once the knight is cut from the king. And you're right here, White should keep his pieces together. And this one I think isn't going to be that hard, and I like Ton's technique here. Cut the knight's squares. Absolutely. I think this is done. Yeah. Good. Oh, look at that. Just cutting him down. Cut that man down. Woo! Very nice. I had this ending against GM Nick the Fermian in Reno, I don't know, 10 years ago or something like this. And it's kind of interesting because I knew about the disconnection of the knight and the king, and I saw it coming from, like, I knew that when I got to the ending that it would be disconnected, and I just said to myself, yeah, it's going to be winning. And Yermo won a famous game like that too, with the disconnection of the knight and the rook. Sometimes it can be very complicated. And my takeaway is just that you can tell yourself it is going to generally be winning if you disconnect the things, even if the details are hard, right? Okay, by Lolly. So let's take a look at our business here. We've looked at the dojo battles. Now we're going to look at winning positions that went wrong. We got several games here. And yeah, some interesting stuff. I really enjoyed the dojo battles. I'm hoping, guys, that we can get more games done in the dojo to look at. I want to say as well that if you want to analyze a game and you don't want to go through Kraai's like big time, analyze it all for like a gazillion hours and submit it in this form. A lot of times if you go on, when Bruce is doing his show, you can go on there and say, buddy, dude, I've got this game. I haven't annotated it, but would you look at it? He might look at it. I've seen him do it a couple times. So there's more than one way to get your game analyzed on the dojo. And again, what I'm doing with this is, it's not just so that you sub to our Twitch, but I really do believe that analyzing your games is the path to improving. And so this is my way of trying to help people do that. All right, let's continue. So this is Kimaga's game, I think from Scandinavia. So let's take a look. This, by the way, is an interesting... It's interesting to play this against the Dutch. I had this position as white against Hikaru, the one time I beat the kid. And I think black's best move here, which is what he did, is to play d6. And that kind of forces white to play d4. That way, you don't have to worry about whether or not white can take the knight. Should he take the knight? Yeah, he should take the knight. If you know the guy's going to play the Dutch, by the way, a great way of doing it is this way. And are you going to take the knight? Yeah, you're going to take the knight. It's going to be great. So, in this game, by the way, let's see here. I'm going to stress Kamaga is white here for whatever reason in the way he submitted it. It's not showing the game, the names. No, excuse me. Kamaga's black here, I think. Okay. So F4 is weird. And we get the second Dutch game, which I think is kind of funny. I have no understanding of A4. I couldn't tell you for the life of me. Let's play some of these moves. There's a lot of these moves I don't get. But this basic setup, I want to congratulate black on. And really, it's the same idea that we were talking about with this old school Dutch where you play d6 and e6. Maybe somebody can tell me what the original name of that thing is. But this was the system that Tal and other Soviets back in the day came up with. And I've always thought that the parking of the bishop on d8 was pretty classy. We, of course, saw Seth park it on d8, but he had a different vision for that. We've had, anyways, a couple of bishops on d8 today. Okay, b6. Now, you correctly say, double question mark, no idea of why I played this. I was afraid of something, but I cannot figure out what. A waste of time. Right. Now, of course, it's not a double question mark, right? A double question mark would mean you're losing the game. But the rage against yourself is kind of appropriate. And I think one of the cool things about analyzing your games is, be hard on, you don't want to be hard on yourself on every single move. But a move like b6, you really want to yell at yourself. Be like, buddy, what are you doing? What are you doing, bro? You've got all your pieces ready to launch on the king side. It's time to figure out how to do it, man. And I assume one of the reasons you did b6 was you didn't know how to proceed right now, right? And so instead you kind of delayed taking the decision and played b6. Okay, rook g1, queen h6. That move would have been fine, of course, last move. Do I understand bishop d1? I do not. Okay, good. Check to the miserable king. Are you winning now? It looks really good. Was f4 also a beautiful move? Yes, it was. So, let's just say this looks winning to me. The rook on b1, no one knows what it's doing. The king, permanently worse. The bishop on d1, oh my God, what a sorry piece. Your piece is amazing, right? Okay. e4, f4, excuse me, e4, fg, great play. Now you're killing him. By the way, I'm going to flip this because Kamaga was black in this game. So the theme of the next couple games is like the fish that got away, or, the game that got away, and from a winning position. And definitely here, oh my God, we're totally winning this game. Not just because we're up a pawn and the king is bad, we've got other things on our side too. So bishop g5, fine. h4. When you annotate, this is not just for Kamaga, but anybody, take a note of h4 and say, no, you can't play h4. That's not the way you do it, son. right? He is making more weaknesses on his weak side of the board, really in front of his king, and in particular the g4 square. So when I think about what goes down in this game, I really got to say, hey, we should be able to use that g4 square at some point a little bit later. Good move. Could have done f4. Good move. You could have left it there too. Okay, fine. Fine. And that can't be right. That can't be right. So here, Kamaga, I think is a good point to think about what's going on. First off, knight e2 looks totally winning because bishop c1 followed by bishop g4. He gave you that. He gave you that g4 square, right? We can go snip, snip, and snock. Hard to. I don't think he's going to live through that. I just can't believe that. So there's that, and also a really juicy move. You know, we might have to analyze it a little bit to make sure it works, but 96, that looks like a winner of a move. You know, I'm going to guess you were afraid of 95, but I mean, I'm just going to assume that's toast, right? That's got to be crispy critters. So this move here, knight f takes f3. That's a move I think you should point to as one of the reasons why things didn't go well here. Are you still winning after knight f3? Absolutely. Yes, sir. Okay. So boom, boom, boom. Not sure really yet what you're threatening, right? All right. Of course, you're still winning. And let's read what you wrote here. This move came as a bit of a surprise, and I panicked because I felt my position was slipping. You're right, I'm still winning. Of course, you're still winning. And what we should say is when you see that move d4, it should not be fear that rises in your heart, but glee, because the guy is opening his kimono. What is he doing? He's opening his kimono. You can't be opening your kimono when you got a king on g2. He's opening more lines. And you've got a variety. Even if you just played king h8, you would still be thankful for this move d4 because he is just making more weaknesses. At some point, the d file. He doesn't want to open that. The e4 square. He doesn't. It seems like it's on lockdown now, but we have a variety of ways to talk to that pawn. So I think one cool thing about this game that you can, let's say, take home with you is that when you've got a really powerful position like this, your opponent's moves like d4 are more desperation than anything else, and they're not helping. The guy has got to sit on his hands here, you know, and pray for survival. You know, if he's going to move any pawn, I would say play h5, you know. Yeah, all right. A little bit losing the thread, but okay. Okay, now, king h8. I mostly approve of this message. Was that the most insane thing we've ever seen, ChessDojo? Yeah, what are you doing, buddy? What are you doing? And now, of course, you had the absolute cracker of a move here, g2. Oh, man, look at that. Boom! Boom! That comes with a thunderous thud. That comes with a thunderous thud, Kamaga. Bishop f3. And now we got to say some terrible things. At this stage, maybe you are still winning, okay? But the terrible thing is his king, which was a victim before, is now better than your king. Major problem, right? So we needed to mate, and we weren't interested in all this pawn stuff. All right, now are you still winning? I'm going to guess probably. Good move. E6, not a great move, honestly, because your king is just there. One of the cool things about rook and pawn endings is the king is a blockader. Oh, man, he's a beast. You write rook e3 and it's done? Yes, true. Is it still done? Yes. And you're winning. Okay, Beautiful. So, Tim, let's move on. Tim has been on the show many times. This was actually from a real game. One of the interesting things about the show this last year has been, we get submissions from all over the world, and the there were various games being played in real life. We had a tournament where our friend Vishnu got to play here in the United States, but basically it was places like I think Vienna and Sweden where they had a couple tournaments. And Tim is writing here that it looks like over the board chess is shut down for the while. I'm hoping in a month or two we can play again, but who knows. So, anyways, the barometer, the chess, the monthly game review show barometer of how chess is doing in the world is suggesting we're on pretty much worldwide lockdown here. Okay, so bishop g5. I didn't know this was called the elephant trap. I knew that it was a trap. Let's just say the trap is boom, 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 boom. That's probably on the puzzle rush somewhere. Knight bd7. I'm not a huge expert, but I think it's giving white maybe a couple more options. But if you're going to play with bishop d6, as you do here, it might all be the same. ChessDojo is now helping out with the U.S. Chess School, and some great segments that we've had on recently. And I bring it up because Casa Corley who's done a segment there, has kind of popularized systems in the Queen's Gambit Decline with bishop d6. I think Cosa even calls it like the Casa system or the Corley system, something like that. Okay, so knight e2, and you note that I said that this was a little funny business after bishop d6. And I have to admit, I don't entirely remember. I kind of remember saying that. And you prove the point now with the thunderous blow, boom, bishop h2. One of the key reasons for playing bishop d6 in the first place. Now, are you completely winning this position? Completely. Tim, you're crushing the guy. And so now the next couple moves are going to be kind of a questioning of how things went wrong. And I think actually to just approach how to win a position like this, it's helpful to just think about the dynamics and what you're after. You're going to make things very complicated, but I think a simple way to approach it is to say, you know what? That king is permanently weaker than my king. And really what I'm interested in is not so much like going to some ending where I'm up just a pawn. If I get the ending where I'm up a pawn, we can say, well, I got a clear advantage in that case. This position, though, I'm going to say is winning. And the reason is that his king is going to be ultimately too weak. Now, are you going to mate him like next move? No. You're not going to mate him next move, but you are going to eventually start causing a lot of problems and probably also concessions by working at it, by massaging that king. And so, for example, here, the simple way to play, there might be more than one, I'm sure there's more than one, is just take the thing. You can tell his knight that it's not doing so hot there. Play rook e8, play knight f8, and at some point, you're going to trade this knight f4 off. And you could say to me, Kraai, what are you talking about trading the pieces? Well, even if I trade off all the minors, his king is still in dire straits over there. It's a real problem. Okay, so bishop f4, queen c7, wrong direction. Rook c1, and now you criticize queen b8, and it is weird. But the pin on the file is dangerous because he's threatening knight b5 now. That's a real threat. Do I think you should just play bishop f4 and queen d6? Yeah, you're still doing great after that. Are you still winning after this? You are, but you've already kind of like gone in the wrong direction, right? g3, let's call that a weird move. It's a very weird move, honestly. Okay, now we're kind of on the right path. And you should play, I think, knight e6. Trade the defender off. Queen d6, of course, was fine. a5, a little bit funky, but all right. And right, you write kind of correctly, a clear overreaction to his harmless threat. But I understand where you're coming from. I liked b6 in principle a lot. I really liked it. You know, did we make things more difficult than we should have? Yes, but you're going to do this cool thing to him now. He comes back. We say thank you very much. And, of course, I really don't want to play queen c7 because I don't want to set this kind of business up for myself. You right, and you got this great trick, right? So I'm just asking myself, was it true, though, that you needed to go back? Could, for example, you have played rook b8? My guess is that you can. And the advantage is I want my queen on d6. I want to play c5 next move, right? I'm just assuming that that's the end of the world for him right there. Yeah. Okay. Queen c7, very tricky. And this is why I didn't like it. This one, Tim, this is the one you want to scream at yourself for. Because you've given up. You've given up on your beautiful plan. What a beautiful thing it was. Can we just go back and look at Seth's beautiful maneuver for a second? Can we look at it? Oh, man, look at that thing. He also had a bishop, just like yours, doing the dance to the king. What a beautiful thing. So, yeah, a sorrowful day when you play b5. Sorrowful day. Okay. So, knight c5. And now, right, now are we going to say that white's lost? No way. No way. The pawn isn't even that meaningful anymore. And your bishop is terribles. Yeah, we got to believe in white here. Now, we'll think about his problems another day, but what he's doing is he's going pawn hunting, which I'm not totally thrilled about. It's getting more complicated than he wants. And boom, thank you very much. He had one job. He had one job, and that was to prevent this c5 move. Now who knows what's going on? It's definitely toast now. So, remarkable turn of events. Yeah, all over. All over now, baby blue. So, yeah, I think that was something you can say to yourself, right? When I've got that extra pawn, I got to be thinking about my pieces and not about the pawn, right? He was a little guilty about thinking about the pawn himself. Okay, let's move on to Allison. I don't know if Allison's been on the show before, but here we go with her game. And I put this on missed wins, the missed wins category, but I'm not sure that it truly belonged there. We'll talk a little bit about why in a second. DC4. So this is a tricky business, and Allison calls her opponent cephalopodic, sly, slippery, and changes texture. And DC4 is definitely a very violent move because now if you play E4, you got that it gets truly hectic and theoretical with the so-called Vienna variation. To my mind, the Vienna is like basically as complicated and as weird as the poison pawn in the Najdorf. Just pieces flying all around. Sometimes you don't even know why. Very dangerous for both sides. Okay, so E3 was played. I bailed out with this move in my game against Yasser Seirawan, U.S. Championship 2003, something like that. Maybe it's 2002. And he also played a6, and I took on c4. a4 I can imagine. And let's say black is going well here. He plays takes, knight d7 strikes me as interesting as well. But of course, bishop takes c5 gets him this business, and he's the proud owner of an unopposed dark square or light square bishop. Now, what he did though to himself is he went down by his craven desire for your bishop. He went down in tempi, and you correctly played e4. And now you've got a little bit of initiative. As I've said on the show many times, the main issue strategically for players at this level is that they give away time. And black had a desire for a bishop. Was it cool? It's kind of cool there on c8, but at the moment it's a pretty bad piece, right? So now you have the initiative. And I would say here you've got two choices, bishop g5 and e5. They both look good to me. I'm partial to e5, mostly because then I'll know that I can bring... All right, I'm just going to pretend that everything is okay and go back to this delicious stream that we had going on. So I was saying e5 was partial to, but bishop g5 was also a good move. h6 happened. And now you have a choice between taking and bishop h4. I am partial to taking because we get a position, let's say like that, and that just looks good for you. You know, you've got your initiative going. After bishop h4, your opponent, maybe rightly, says to himself, I'm in trouble and I need to start some drama, plays b5 immediately. And let's say to his credit, right, he needs to start some kind of stuff like this. And you write, nice variation, g5, boom, boom, boom. I have no idea what the evaluation is here, but instinct tells me I can make Princess Harry a queen. That's a great line. I don't know if you need to make Princess Harry a queen, because how does he stop e5? If he plays e5 himself, then knight d5 comes. So anyways, b5, I think necessary. And I didn't understand why you didn't take the pawn immediately on b5. What I want us to see with this line, actually, that's kind of interesting is it's a good example of a counter gambit. And from a defensive standpoint, when I say that's what I mean. So, for example, black is going to get killed here if the initiative continues on white side. And so something drastic has to happen immediately, right? So this is what it does. And of course, the advantage that black has is that bishop, and it might come to life as it does in this game. So I'm having, I don't know, my computer's like, it's really upset. It's really upset. All right, queen e2. I didn't understand it. I thought queen b5. Snip, snip. Queen b7. And you write, I saw this position when I played queen e2. The point in delaying the capture is to trade queens. And what's interesting to me about that, and maybe something you can take it away from, is that, God, I'm really having trouble here. Oh, I don't know. The thing that you can take away from this game, I think, is that you didn't want to trade queens, I think. When you trade queens, kind of like in the last game, what's going to happen is you are going to only have an advantage of a pawn, and that's not necessarily a winning position. And in fact, with the bishops, it could become very frightening. So, right, I guess I understand what you were doing now with the delaying of the trade, but it's creating far more problems than it is solving And one thing interesting about this position is while I think you thought of it as maybe still winning for yourself, Black has every hope here to say that he is going to get great play. The bishops are stunning in positions like this. And let's say the obvious reason why. The bishops control more squares than the knight, especially when the board is open. They can get like 11 or 12 squares, the knight maximum 8. And of course, with the two bishops, he gets to control both colors, right? So let's read what you write here. Winning might be a strong word, but it certainly seems comfortable for white. Two bishops with a broken structure. And yeah, I want to say if I was playing like a game, I'm not sure who I would rather be here, black or white. That isn't to say I think black is better, but I definitely think white has got some problems to solve, you know? Especially imagine like your king is going to have to come out at some point, and once it does, it can get nailed by those bishops, right? The bishops can make one or more of your pieces bad, is a way to think about it. Okay. Let's see here if I got, I'm just hoping I'm even online here. There we go. So Paul is saying the problem was with Twitch and not with me. I bet it was me. I bet it was me. It's usually me. So if your opponent, Sharky, is watching this, Allison, tell him that I said bishop b4. I really dislike this move because he's trying to like get his pawn back. He doesn't want his pawn back. There's no hurry for him to put the pawn back. Play a move like rook d8 or rook b8. Some move like that. So bishop bishop b4, rook a4, and you give that a question mark. But honestly, I think you want to be a little careful here. And what you're sad about is the fact that you're going to lose a pawn after rook c8. But like I said, I think you're already in a little bit of trouble. This position, you could fight on a little bit with maybe something like knight d2, rook c3, f3, and it'll likely be a draw, but you can make a claim that the knight is better than the bishop in this position. Okay, rook b4, and then things fall apart, as the famous novel goes. Knight d2, and this is again a puzzle rush tactic with rook c1 mate. So yeah, instructive, and I think, Allison, when you think about, let's go back a second. Let's go back. This applies to more than one player today. I think had a similar misconception. Your opponent gave you the initiative in the opening and didn't appreciate the value of your development here, and by snagging the bishop. So you're doing great. Your path to winning the game was to try to do a thing where you win a pawn and then consolidate. But really, your advantage here, I think, has everything to do with attacking his king before his bishop on c8 can really properly enter the game. Okay, I got to speed it up a little bit. I've been talking too long. So let's move on to Chesterfish. He's been on the show a bit. And he says b6 is a weird move. It is a weird move. I don't know how bad it is, but it's definitely a little bit funky. Sometimes I don't know how bad this move is. All I can say for sure is back in the day, Kramnik played a variation that I'm going to try to get it right. Sometimes I get these things wrong. b6. Bishop d2, bishop b7, castles, bishop b7, knight c3, castles, rook e1, d5. And so we're going to get the same position basically, except that white has played rook e1, which is debatable in this position, right? Whereas like if we go to your position, it's not like you're going to play rook e1 in this position. Oh, Allison, cool. Yeah, I always want to win the endgame. It's a compulsion, right? I hope I'm not disconnecting, my friends. I got some, like my computer's going blink. I don't know. Kostya's the magical Twitch genius. Okay, so knight f3, and you write about cd5, right? Bishop d6 is pushing it, because I don't think he wants to take that. My computer's like having just brain farts all over, like brain freezes. Okay. These positions are hard to play, and I think that a default way for you to play this particular one would be to play CD, knight c3, and e4. Can you castle first? Of course, you can castle first if you want. But that would be my, general recommendation of how to play this kind of position. Okay, so bishop f4 and knight h5. So one case monkey. Let me just say, you guys can barely hear my computer melting down. It's really melting down, and it's really upset. But at least, the stream is going. I don't know. Chess Weeb, thank you for rating me and my terrible computer. This, we gotta say, is a critical moment, and we talked a little bit about critical moments before. And why? Because black is pushing the limits and is obviously trying to do some kind of fancy business with collapsing our center. And white doesn't sense the danger and just goes castles here. We're going to see the problem is black is intending the very violent g5, and then bishop e3, some kind of bishop takes e5 and d4 problem. All we need to do, I think, is play cd at any point, and we will be absolved from that problem. And we should be much better here just because of our development advantage. Like I've said before, the general problem that you're seeing on people under 2,000 or even under 2,200 is not respecting development. But it's often a very technical thing to try to put somebody away for that problem, to put them in jail, because, like you see here, it's very tactical. So he goes for it. And now, I guess, we needed to throw in this move CD, after which, as the note suggests, it is very complicated. And I talked before about the critical positions and how you need to allow yourself to think for 20 minutes here. Very much the case. Very much the case. So now we got to do that. DE5, the problem was, of course, D4. So now, though, this happens, and now we're in trouble. Now we are simply lost. The game goes on, but it's basically over. Could black have played some of this better? Yes. But he's doing pretty good, isn't he? And we're toast. Game over. So, Chesterfish, I think of all, let me just go back to my scene here. I put these, I had winning positions, and I just, I didn't do an extra red thing for you, Chesterfish, but I really felt that that was an example just of calculation. You had a couple positions where calculation was very necessary. And, a lot of times in super GM level games, you'll get something like that, where there's just one moment where everything needs to be figured out. Most of the games we're seeing today, maybe most GM games too, there's going to be multiple opportunities for both sides to make mistakes. Sometimes, though, it really comes down to one position, and that was definitely the case, I feel, in your game there, Chester. Okay, let's move on to the next one. And we got Kraai. I don't know how to say Krai's name. HS, I think my symphony of computer sounds have died away. What the problem was, I don't know. Krai's been on the show before, And he's doing this longer time control that's going on chess.com and other sites. It's kind of like it is correspondence chess. I think it's kind of interesting. I have an older student that really enjoys it. Really enables him to like sleep on the move, think about what's going on, use arrows and stuff. You can, without using the computer, use the analysis board to look ahead a little bit. And yeah, I think it's an interesting way for several people I know to improve. In a way, what it is it's a way to analyze your games while they're going on, right? So instead of doing it the way we're doing it now, these people are like analyzing their games essentially as they're happening. Okay, so here we go. We're going to get a violent winnower. And you're right, the bishop b5 isn't really happening in your database. Makes sense because it's a very strange move. However, sometimes it's not totally ridiculous. And in particular, in situations where we absolutely have to hold on to the e5 square. Sometimes the pawn, but oftentimes just the square. And he comes up with this idea, queen g4. Interesting. Let me flip this because it's from black's perspective. Do I believe in black's position? I do, but it's pretty hectic. Bishop c3 here would have been a way to play, but let's look at what happens in your game. And here now a very interesting decision that I had some misgivings about. You played d4, and it's going to get really crazy now. It's really going to get crazy. Is it wrong? Maybe not, but it feels like you're asking a lot of the position with this move. Whereas, let me just ask a basic question. Like, if we just take this thing, my sense, I don't know how true this is, but my sense is that you are better here in this position. Yeah, that's my sense. It seems like you got to be more than fine after just taking the pawn. He doesn't want to, the whole problem with bishop b5 is eventually my ugly bishop is going to be looking at you and saying, hey, you want to make a trade? You want to trade it off, buddy? Thank you, Sombrero. I think I had some USB. I was trying to work with it. It seems like it's figured itself out. I did not do anything technical to figure it out. I couldn't figure it out. It was beyond me, and I'm just thankful that it seems to have abated for the moment. So very fascinating position. The people who like the winnower often gets wild positions like this. And I believe in black, but whew, yeah, anything could happen. Let's say that this is a little bit insane, knight b4, and you write about stockfish castling. And castling is by all means, I'm going to say it's the human move, just because you got to watch your business here. I get it, you had an idea, and let's show the idea. Snip, snip, d3, whew, very exciting. And a very difficult position to judge here. Very difficult position to judge. Queen a4, and he now makes, I think, an insane move where you write about a bunch of different moves. I think g3 was one of the moves he mentioned, and that to me is just a very human thing to do. After which, I have no sense of what's going on. So many of these winnower positions, very hard to judge, what's happening, and this one definitely one of them. Now, you write that rook af8 looks great, definitely looks great. Look at that. This is the winnower dream, right? Yeah, this is the winnower dream. This is all these knights dancing on the light squares. You don't have to analyze this one to feel good about it, right? Let's just show your variation because it's nice. Very, very nice. Boom. Done. Game is done. Okay. Queen g4. And right now, maybe he lives. Right, you read queen h4. And you call this even. To me, I'm just totally lost. I have no idea. I don't understand any of this stuff. Nothing. So we got this. And one of the amazing things about this game was when I first saw it, I was like, oh, we're going to get the two knights mate. That's because I just did a video about it. Check it out. It's coming out tomorrow. Two knights, obviously you need a pawn for white to have a pawn to mate. Allison says she gave up the French because it's too sharp. It is. It's a very violent opening, and it's sometimes just incredibly messy like this. Okay. I don't understand. There's a lot of weird things happening to me here. And let's just say the basics here. Black needs to restrain the pawns. White has grounds for optimism because he's got like this, the rook on a2 is passive, and these pawns are looking scary. Now, rook e2 is what the computer wanted. We should also mention that a move like c5 makes a lot of sense here. You end up playing c5 next move. I didn't understand why we couldn't just do it this move. Maybe I'm missing something. And this is scary now. And what we got to say with this development that happened is you didn't really help yourself with the c4 and takes b2 stuff, because now his rook is active. Before it was such a miserable piece. And right now I got to start, we're worried for your health. And here's where I thought, oh, we're going to get this ending. Did I like it that he traded? I wasn't thrilled. And so, right, a move here that would scare me more for you would be bishop e3, just improving the position, intending to fix the king, play h6, f4 someday. So now you have, I think you have winning chances now. All right, bishop e3 with the nasty threat of bishop c5, f4, a5. And now a crime that you should remember is that you took that thing on f5. And that's like, oh no, crimes to remember. Maybe I could do a synopsis show of this show called Crimes to Remember. And yeah, it's a crime to take that thing, because then you are liberating the pawn on e4, which right now is doing absolutely nothing. Furthermore, if you want to win this game, you are going to have to keep one of those pawns on the board. That's part of the deal. Now, are you winning? I don't know. Probably not. But the variation would go something like this, right? a4, bishop c5, h6. I don't know. Let's say bishop c5. We're going to play a3. I'm going to take it. And no, this is frightening. This is frightening for white. You're probably going to lose the h pawn, and then I'm going to blockade the e pawn. And actually, what I'll do in an ideal circumstance, I'll put my knight on e5 by taking your pawn, and that's a known winning position with the knight, the two knights. We have the best thumbnail in ChessDojo history coming out tomorrow. Please check it out. I love the thumbnail. It's really great. Kind of a follow-up video from the video I did on the bishop and knight checkmate. So ef5, and now, I don't know, maybe, if anybody's going to win now, it's white, right? I didn't understand any of it. And now we get a draw. Okay, let's move on. I really want to see someday somebody's going to get the two knights on the show. Juan goes by the name of Nacional, and he's been on the show several times. I think this is a fine way of playing against the Berlin. You can play a lot of Rui positions this way. And bishop d7 does not strike like a lot of confidence. But black is passive. He's going to hang out. We're going to get this position, queen c8. Now black starts to go wrong. And it's just these positions, first of all, we got to say, one thing I find is interesting is regardless of your level in chess, you're going to be affected by the world champions. So what do I mean? Even if you haven't seen Magnus Carlsen play, it will drift down to your level. And what I mean by that is, this way of playing the Rui, very slow way of playing with d3, it's happening even if you didn't know about Magnus, because that's just the way people are playing now with his slow style. And it's, in a way, it's a similar feel to the way Magnus plays the London, just these slow building moves. And so now you get all kinds of people who've never even looked at Magnus games also playing the London in that kind of slow, methodical way. Of course, back in the day, when Fischer played the Rui, everybody played d4. That was just what was done. It was just assumed like that's the way you had to do it. And people who hadn't studied any of those Fischer games also played for d4. Okay. So, queen c8, no need. Rook b8 is kind of weird. d4 unnecessary, by the way. Just play knight f1. It's kind of interesting when you think about this d4 move. When I was a kid and I played the Rui because, I saw some Fischer games or something, it's just kind of assumed that's what you did. In hindsight, what's interesting about it is you're not really helping anybody out, any of your pieces, when you play d4. Whereas the slow style is we're going to fix our queen's knight, the knight that's now on d2, before we do anything with anything fancy. So, all right, d4. And here's an interesting thing. I also, as a kid, played knight g3 kind of reflexively. And one point to just share is that knight e3 was Fischer's move of choice, if he could get it in. And the point is, it's just much more dynamic to play it on knight e3. Not only you have knight f5 options, but you also have knight d5 options. And unlike the one chess player on the planet that wasn't totally happy with the Queen's Gambit thing, the show. But one thing that they did, it was kind of funny, is there was a famous Fischer position where Fischer sacrifices a pawn and a Rui with knight d5. And, Beth and the crew are hanging out at some hotel and they go by and they're like, "Hey, Beth, what should they do in this position?" And she's like, "Knight d5, for sure." And I instantly recognized that as the Fischer position. So they at least got some cool positions when they did the show. Anyways, that's why knight e3 is more dynamic, because of ideas like knight d5. So, right, and this queenside expansion is not the most impressive thing. Now, here's the thing with bishop g5. In general, you don't want to do it. Why? Because let's say there's negative tension on the bishop. What do I mean by that? The bishop on e7 is not so hot. We don't want to trade it off. We're not interested. Does it help that the queen's on c8 instead of d8? It does, because sometimes there's some kind of discoveries with the bishop over there. But still, it doesn't really help. h6, we go back. Boom, boom. Boom, queen a6. Is it a tempo loss? Probably. Is that ugly? Yeah. But the thing about what happens now is you allow black to trade off all the rooks. I don't think you should be trading off all the rooks. Keep at least one. Keep at least one. Could you imagine? It's already a little hard, right? The way you've done it, because now if you go back, he's going to play queen b7. So we get this position, and are you better here? Yeah, you're a little bit better. The whole queen b8 thing has been funny from the start, but it's going to be hard, and hard to find, plans and ideas here. My guess is something like, I don't even know. It's a hard one. I have sympathy for your queen c2 move. He finds this probably correct, and if cd, then knight b4. Maybe you should have let him do it because he did give up your center pawn, his center pawn. All right, now some. Do I understand Queen E8, by the way? I don't. Do I understand that? No. You do. Yeah, you need to play something like King F2 to build, and you correctly say something like Knight D5 here. Yeah, just hanging the spins. Okay, so we're going to go snaggle a pawn. Knight B7 makes me worried. Now it's like, oh my God, I'm really worried. So A5, good. And I think probably one, you correctly said to yourself, I'm winning this thing. Should black have played queen takes e4? No, terrible decision. Let's revisit that actually. Your knight is on this terrible thing over there. It's I don't. We need we need a new word for that kind of fianchetto, like an accelerated fianchetto. It's accelerated fianchettoed himself. The pawn on g3 is giving me heartburn. And will that pawn on a4 advance? It better, because otherwise you're going to lose. And you correctly say knight e4 was better. It doesn't need a double exclam though, right? Because in general he needs to keep the queens on, both to attack your king and to help deal with the a pawn. Because after the queens come off, holy moly, that's what they call a holy roller, right? Very difficult to stop this guy. And now you might be forced, I was thinking, you might be forced to do the bishop and knight checkmate, which I just did the video on. I'm selling my videos hard here today. Things got weird. Are you winning? Yeah, you're winning this. Of course that's slow. Yeah, too slow. I'm assuming g4 is winning. f5 is weird, and the simple reason is that he's ultimately helping you to get a pass pawn over there. I'm not sure about knight a5. And that, of course, as you write, helps the guy in, and now we don't know what's happening anymore. Now we just don't know. And actually, let me talk about this position for a second. What you're going to do with bishop b4, and you write after this it's a draw. Probably, but I think you can still give the guys some heartache here. So for example, let's say I play here. Okay, he's going to play c2. I can at least mess with him like this. It's a little bit hectic for him. Do I think he's probably going to... I don't know. Actually, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I really don't know. If we win the g-pawn, that's going to be scary. So I'm just saying this wasn't over, and this was like a premature liquefaction, if I may, of the position. Now we get a draw. Okay. So I've been at this over 2 hours. Am I kind of losing my mind? A little bit. But we're going to look at Matt's win against the anonymous I Am. Now imagine that when I lose to people, they always publish my name. They always say, oh, I beat Kraai, man. I beat Kraai. You know, he's my GM. He's my scalp. And then they get a little picture of me and they put it on their refrigerator and stuff. Matt, on the other hand, he's a nice guy. And the guy he beat is an anonymous I Am. Now, one thing about this game that's interesting is it's a training game. And they agreed to start the position somewhere around here. And I think it's a very advanced idea to leave the bishop on c1. It's his unopposed bishop. It's a beautiful bishop, but it doesn't know where to sit. And honestly, it sits pretty good on c1. The natural impulse of every chess player is to develop the pieces, and usually that's correct. But in a position like this, where our rook on a1 might be able to do something over there on the queen side, as long as it does something over there, then the bishop is fine sitting on c1. It's a beautiful piece. In fact, let's just say the dynamic of the position has got to be something like, well, we have this beautiful bishop, but in compensation, black has some double pawns to work with. A4, I'm not thrilled with A6, by the way. I think something, to me, the obvious move is something like knight E7 to G6. Okay, I was going to say something, I'm not. And he had prepared this. Matt had prepared this whole thing before the game. And one thing that it's kind of interesting in these positions, the E4, E5 positions that are so prevalent these days, is it's still often very difficult to make, what am I saying? It's always difficult to make decisions. But black now he's kind of a bit of a problem where he begins to be obsessed about the fear of bishop takes E6, even though white has already not done it. And I think that black should by all means fix this knight. In general, in these repositions, that's the thing that's got to get fixed, and you got to do something like knight E7 to G6. Yeah. So I like that a lot. Was it the best move? Maybe it wasn't, but I like it a lot. You're giving him grief. C4, I like that a lot. Because you're putting your pawns on the opposite color of your beautiful bishop, and the other bishop will now be traded off. Knight E7, C5. In principle, I like it a lot. You're opening the position for your bishop. And he goes back, and now let's just say, because the c-pawn has moved, the necessity of moving the knight isn't quite as strong. But still, I don't really know what it's doing on c6. And Matt amazingly says that he calculated this knight h4 when he played c5. Which seems amazing to me because it seemed like there were various other things that black could have done. Now, is white better? He at least has a very pleasant, Rui style position, right? Now, first instinct here for black, for me anyways, is to play d5. Action on the wing is met by action in the center. Oh, some people are really hating on Nimzovich these days, my friends. They are really hating on him. Okay, knight f5. And what's weird is, about this knight f5, is, right, this happens, and your rook e3 you give a question mark to, but it's very thematic. It's just a beautiful idea that you've got to say, well, when this guy goes, then this guy is cruising. And it ultimately pays off. But, of course, the issue is, well, if you let him take, then the center is going to be too magical for him. I have a lot of sympathy for this rook e3. And boom, 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 and you write here that knight g8 was better. Feels right to me. That is a very thematic thing that you do against the knight on f5. Even though the knight's not there anymore, right? But it has everything to do with covering h6. And, there's the famous quote, with a knight on f8, you won't get mated. And these Rui positions often feel to me the same could be said with the knight on g8. All right. Okay. So, boom. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I have a threat. He doesn't see it, or he doesn't want to see it. Queen e1. Wait, what happened here? Hold on. Let's go back. e3. So critical moment, and in time pressure, you chose the line that's easier to play. And, well, actually, it is a hard decision. It's interesting. I wouldn't necessarily say that white's better here. So let me just say, with this business of allowing g4, g5, it does not feel correct from black. And it's surprising to me, maybe it was surprising to you as well, that he's surviving this thing. But your queen is abysmal. I mean, now we got to say he's better, right? Whew. Gotta be better. The queen is so bad. You write about d5. Still looks poor for you. But he did give you that. And now who knows what's happening, right? The whole monster is loose now. You know, there's a kind of interesting thing about people don't want their rooks. Just in general, they don't want the rooks. And the machine wants you to play queen c7 here. They don't want the rooks because this kind of stuff happens. Oh, you can't do that, buddy. Can't do that. Now you're winning. Check to the miserable king. Okay. Beautiful game against the anonymous IM. Hard times, that's right. Living with a pawn on the 7th is just no bueno. Yeah. So, now Allison says, Nimzo is so deeply ingrained in chess culture that you will get everything in my system from other books. And you know, on this, we had this great show about, we do this Dojo Talks things most Sundays, and it was about the greatest chess books. These are classics, so books that are kind of at least kind of well known, and before, let's say 2000, so that they've had, you know, not the new books, which no one's really had time to digest yet. Also the pre-computer age books, you know. Anyways, I listed Nimzovich as the top book of that time, but also I don't necessarily recommend it to people because it, you know, it's like 100 years old, and there's like it takes some translating before people understand what it's about. You know, it takes a moment, and it takes some deep study before one can really appreciate it. Okay, we're moving into our final segment. We're going into the improvement segment here. And we got Nicholas and Ricker, who have been on the show for years and years. And basically, we're going to get some showcase games here. Both games, though, have one or two moments that I want to spend some time on. So here we go. In shows past, I've forgotten to switch the scenes and got in real trouble. People yelling at me, putting in purple highlights, you know. Okay, so here we go. So, Nicholas, here we go. He's playing a good friend. This is an over-the-board friendly game. Nicholas is an expert with this trump. And as I mentioned earlier, I think c takes is a key mistake, after which white is going to get a delicious Carlsbad position. If black plays d5. Should he play d5? Probably not, but I already like it for white, even if black doesn't play d5. Yeah, terrible move, you're right. And now we have this very nice attacking structure. And yeah, this is a model. Queen e2, knight e5. Nicholas knows what he's doing. Now, is this position winning? I think it's if it's not winning, it's very close to winning. And here is, I think, a big decision. White plays knight f3. And the reason I'm not completely happy with knight f3, even though, you know, obviously white's position is amazing, is that knight f3 is going to slow down. I was going to say retard, but we can't say that move anymore. We can't say that word anymore. It will slow down the move queen g4. And that's where the queen wants to be. And there's a lot of French positions where, you know, that's the key dynamic. Can the queen get out there? So the intuitive move for me would definitely be bringing this dog over here, rook a e1, and then we can just let black think about it. Am I playing queen g4? Am I playing queen h5? I can still play knight f3. Rook ae1 doesn't spoil anything. And of course, I still have in my pocket the idea of f4. So rook ae1 feels to me like we're just holding everything available to ourselves. Okay, so in the game, we saw knight f3, knight c5, and this is kind of an interesting criminal procedure, reminiscent of Allison's opponent, who was also a bishop lover, and now we just have it all. We've got the better king, we've got the better minor, and the thing about the knight on c5 is at some point it could have at least tried to get in the way of our business with knight e4. Disrupted our attack. And probably we're going to owe a tempo, having to do like that. And then once we play that, we have to worry about bishop a6. Is white better? Yes. But now I think it's over. And Nicholas brings here. Very nice, of course. We're not going to trade queens. Simple and strong. Bring the lady over. Bring the rook in. Both of them. Thank you very much. Rook f3, maybe not, but this is good enough. Yeah, gotta like it, right? Gotta like it. Very strong. This is what the guy deserves. Bam! Bam! Oh, yeah. Beautiful game, Nicholas. Beautiful game. So really, a model game for how it should look when we get that Carlsbad structure. And hopefully that'll be interesting for Paul, because really, when we saw his Carlsbad structure earlier, that was the dream that he was trying to achieve. Okay, so let's take a look at Ricker. I usually finish with Ricker in this show. He is on the other side of the world, and it's probably like dark 30 there, but I always post these shows on YouTube, by the way, and he's watching them later. Now, one thing I want to just stress before I finish the show is that the show is evolving. It's been going on for years and years. And instead of it being on the chess.com forums, we are moving it now to the ChessDojo Discord channel. And to submit a game for the January 27th show, which will likely be, around this length of time, is all you gotta do is you gotta sub to our Twitch channel, use your Amazon if you want, and then go to the Dojo Discord. You can find that always, if you're watching this on YouTube, there'll be a link right below for the Discord. And otherwise, can I do that fancy? I'm not a tech genius. Let's just see if I can do the fancy Discord thing. Join. There we go. You can join the Discord there. Ricker is here. Great. It's 6:20 Thursday in Surabaya. It's already Thursday over there. Check that out. Well, Ricker, I was really happy with this game. Let me flip it over. And it's cool that you're studying the Mar del Plata King's Indian. A book, actually, I don't know if you're interested in this, but it's up there somewhere. I Play Against Pieces by Gligerich. He was the guy who came up with the King's Indian. He didn't come up with the King's Indian, but the Mar del Plata variation. Kind of some interesting old King's Indian games there. Okay, so far so good. E3 is a possible way to play against the King's Indian. And let's say knight d2 is odd, right? In general, what white could do here is play a setup with knight c3, bishop e2, castles, and then try to expand on the queen side a little bit. And so knight d2 is starting to get some discoordination in the pieces. And now it's not the end of the world, but it's some discoordination. Now the knights are bopping over each other. And one thing I want to point out here, Ricker, actually, is In these positions, king's Indian positions, when they play e3, your main strategic idea is going to be to play e5 and then make him worry about e4. You can see a lot of very similar positions where Fischer played the king's Indian attack against the French with reverse colors. Of course, a lot of Fischer games where they played e3 as well. And the reason I bring it up right now is because once knight e2 is played, it takes away the natural retreat square for the knight, right? After we hit him with e4. And bishop d3 is a little funky because now when we play e5, there's going to be an extra threat to worry about. And the funny with a3 is, let me just show you how I think correct play would go, and then you'll understand why I'm opposed to a3. So knight f6, knight c3, castles, bishop e2. There's a variety of different moves here. Let's play knight d7, castles, e5, b4. This has been seen a variety of times with both colors. Imagine you would be a tempo down with reverse colors as white when you're be black. In fact, that's the famous Fischer-Miag-Mazurin game. Anyways, the point is white must expand on the queen's side, and he's got to realize that he's in a little bit of a hurry to do it because there is an engine. It might not look like it right now, but there's an engine on the king's side that is coming for the white king. And so white needs to punch a hole in the queen's side to create some drama there before he gets mated. And a3, when we contrast it to this position, now it's just a loss of time. So now he's got two little problems, knight d2 and a3. Now, I call this section improvement. Beautiful game by Nicholas. When Ricker first started coming to this show, his problems were not these subtle nuances of the position that his opponent now has. It was more like Ricker was dropping pieces and stuff. And now very much evolved and playing some good moves. e5. All right. b3. It's obviously getting a little scary for white. We're worried about some kind of e4 tactic. At least I'm worried for the guy about some kind of e4 tactic. And if you wanted to play move the b pawn, it should be to b4, as discussed earlier, right? Okay, rook e8. I'm just going to say I like queen e7 better. I like queen e7 better than rook e8, though rook e8 can't be wrong. Takes, and now I really like pawn takes. And I kind of question a little bit whether black is just not going to win. Right? We're touching this. We're talking to this guy. It's going to be a hard road for him. It really is going to be a hard road. Yeah. But of course, you're much better still, and he's giving you time. As I said before, the main issue with people at this level is going to be time. Now, this is the moment, Ricker, I want you to pay particular attention to. I think the way I'd like you to approach this position is when they give you a bunch of tempi, and let's talk about it. He gave you a3. He gave you bishop c2. Gave you a lot of extraneous pawn moves. That all should encourage you, as well as this looming tactical detail, to think to yourself, you know what? I probably have something here. You might want to contemplate what that something is for quite a bit here, but in general, I'm going to say, yeah, I think you got something here, buddy. So you really want to look at all moves that involve opening up the knights. We could look at knight e4. We could look at knight f3 and then knight e4. We could think about one of these knights to g4, threatening some kind of knight f2 thing. One of those moves is going to work. And just off the top of my head, for example, I cannot imagine that isn't really harmful to the guy's health, right? If he takes, we win the exchange. And if he doesn't, some kind of knight c3 is going to land on him. Again, there might be something better, but the main thing is that in this position, you look and say to yourself, I've got to have something here, right? And the more you play the King's Indian, the more you'll develop a sense for this kind of tactic. Okay. D5, you yourself are giving up a tempo there. This guy doesn't care about his tempi. He doesn't care. And now we got to say he's kind of back in the game now. He's kind of back in the game. Should the guy castle? Yeah, he should castle. Check to the miserable king. Very good. I think we're going to have to say he missed that when you played c6. Shame on him, though, for not developing his pieces. Should he play b4? Yeah, he should play b4. That's got to be a strong move. That's got to be a strong move. Well done. And so, Ricker, you took this guy out. You nailed this guy, and that's what we want to see. Absolutely. What elo is this game? Ricker is about 1,700, and I think his opponent was somewhere around the same level. Though these days, it's hard to assess the ratings of all the different servers and stuff. We had Seth as our first guy playing GM level moves, and his official rating, at least the way it was submitted, was like 1,400. It's maybe even less than 1,400. So the ratings are hard to know these days. Okay. Thank you, everybody, so much. Ignoring the tactics, is A5 desirable for black? Sure. And so again, we are migrating the show. I hope it survives. It might take on some kind of different form, as institutions do when they migrate from one forum to another. But we will soon find out. Again, if you want to submit a game for the next show, which will hopefully be the 27th, join our Twitch and Discord channel. Look for the monthly analysis tab. There you can submit your game. And there is book club tonight. I'm going to be a madman by the end of tonight. What else did I want to say? Check out my video on the 2 knights versus the king mate, as well as my bishop and knight mate. And we got a lot of great videos coming up these days. A lot of cool stuff going on in the dojo. And right, I'll hopefully see you guys next month. And if you want to stick around in an hour and a half, me and Kostya are doing book club. All right, everybody. Bye-bye.